Hello everyone, my name is Acontistas, I'm a theory crafter, and this is my nightmare Shield Bash Nuke champion guide. I know it's been a while since my last video, but I want to make sure that I can bring you something I think is truly optimized to the smallest detail. I think there are a lot of other guides about how to tackle a class more or less, but I want to offer knowledge collected from a lot of hours of playing, experimenting with the spec, getting formulas to the smallest comma, and if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and subscribe, because it will drive me to do more of these, since they require so much time and effort to give a good product. Hope you're gonna enjoy. Anyway, let's talk about the faction choice. As I said in my previous video, you shouldn't stress this too much. I think it's a pretty minor decision that you should only make for lore reasons, but if you truly want to get the most bang for your bucks, then I think Grave Warden is what you want to go for. Defense is a really important stat for this build, because aside from being very easy to obtain, it can skyrocket your shield weapon damage past the 900 value, which is more base weapon damage than anything else you can get in the game. Since final shield attacks are gonna be your biggest source of damage, this is definitely the way to go. Another pretty solid choice is Morn Watchers, but since most of your affliction damage comes from burning, it isn't really consistent, and I don't think it's worth over Warden. Sure, you can get some ways to get necrosis, bleeding, shocked, but overall, I don't think this increases your damage as much as a defense increase. The skill tree for this particular build is not too complicated to build up, you don't really require a lot of skill points, it works from pretty early into the game. I'm gonna show you a level 41 snapshot of the build, which is more or less where I think you get to the end game, and everything you should take has been taken. The build works at a fundamental level though, very earlier on than that. You don't really need level 40 and the top side of the champion spec. For the order of priority, you should start off with Focus Retaliation and Downfall, which are just really good in the early game. They don't scale that much, but they're still gonna be pretty useful. You want to get Determined Death and Unbroken Finale. Unbroken Finale makes it so that your best motion value is gonna become a little bit better, about 40% better. This is a good increase of damage, but Determined Death is much more than that. Because if you charge your final attack and release it at the right time, that final attack not only is going to deal more damage, which is about 50% more damage, is also going to hit twice, which is not 100% increase in damage, but it's really strong. This is basically what you want to do at every single moment. You always want to sneak out an Unbroken Finale, Determined Death, charge attack, final attack of course, and after that, while on the way you get Grappling Spear, which is a great utility ability, you're gonna need a damage ability. You're gonna get Spectral Bulwark on the way, which is gonna become better later on, but it's still pretty good. On the way, you do want to get Time Management to increase the duration of both your duration abilities. As you can see, Deadly Ground, which is your bread and butter ability. This is gonna be just so much damage, as I'm gonna show you. And aside from that, you also want to get Immovable with Unyielding Focus, making it so that you can sneak out your full combo even if you get hit. Anyway, talking about Deadly Ground not only gives you enhanced damage and deals quite a lot of damage, this ability is always gonna crit for us, because something the game doesn't tell you is that the critical condition for an ability gets changed if the damage type gets changed, if the critical condition is an affliction. So this Chilled critical condition is gonna get changed into Shocked, which is something that's really available for us thanks to Bellara. You're gonna change the ability type to Fire thanks to Endless Fire, which is the first champion ability you should take. Of course, there's also another way to get Shocked, which is using the Shocked belt, giving you Shocked on demand in an AoE around you. That's also really great. About this time you should be around level 30, and that's where you want to dive on the left side of the skill tree for the champion. Inspiring Guard is really good, your party members do deal a lot of damage, so Rally Party is really good. It's another advantage that's gonna give you more damage for some other parts of the build, but more importantly, it's not really the AoE of Aftermath, which is decent. It's the best defense. Turning defensive stats into offensive stats, it's insane in any RPG I've ever played. There's so many ways to get defense with this build, and gaining 50% of your defense as bonus shield attack damage is gonna make your shield basically around 950 base damage, which is more than double than any weapon in the game. This is absolutely crazy, since your strongest motion value attack, as I was saying before, is indeed a shield attack. After this, what you want to get is things that just improve your deadly ground. Of course, area abilities being increased in range is extremely good. You want to get quickened to use Spectral Bulwark as many times as possible, since Spectral Bulwark is going to increase your defense by 50%, of course. And Executioner's Gaze is a good way to finish enemies. It's extremely strong against bosses. And then Heavy Armor Mastery is also really good to increase your defense. And on the way, you can also get Reinforcement. There's some other stuff you can get that I don't have right here after getting to the top side of the champion tree, getting Inflamed, which is a good increase in damage. Some good stuff I think you should take is more Burning Stocks, of course. Lingering Decay can be decent, but I don't really think it's key. Anything that gives you maximum rage is, of course, really good. I think there's a maximum rage over here. Yeah, maximum rage over here is good. Of course, penetration on area abilities is also good. It's not mandatory, but it can be good. And that's basically it for the skill tree. So let's get to the next part of the build. While equipment is really, really important for all classes, I think it's a little bit less important for the champion. There's only two pieces of equipment you should never take off, which are the Vigilant Great Hammer, that gives you even more damage based on your defense, and the Jumper's Binding, giving you Shocked on demand. It's really good because sometimes their Bellara abilities just miss, they kill the enemy, like anything can happen, honestly, and having Shocked when you need it, it's just a good idea. Some enchantments for the abilities are also, I think, mandatory, more or less. The Flattened Impacts on it is not one of those, but it's just good to have. Cooldown duration reduced for Spectral Bulwark is really strong. You want to have this ability up at all times. And then, of course, ability critical damage on Deadly Ground. Deadly Ground is always going to crit, so this is just a very big increase of damage. For your weapons, Raveni Thornback is more or less going to be the strongest shield you can have throughout the game. Final attacks applying bleeding and plus 100% damage versus bleeding is really good. Final attack damage and penetration is also really good. You can also work with the Bandit's Bulwark, which is kind of strong. You're always going to have immovable. You're going to get immovable in the early stages of the game if you somehow get this to epic very early on. But it's heavy attack damage and damage versus armor, and it's a lot of stagger damage. I've tried working with Taash Bulwark. I don't think this is particularly great. It's too tight to perfect defense, it doesn't really deal a lot of damage. I think there's better ways to group enemies, like Bellara for instance. The weapons, a lot of them can work. This is one of the most critical oriented weapons, which I really like. Heavy armor is sadly a little bit worse than medium armor, but these particular two pieces are just gonna increase your companion damage so much, and your companions deal a lot of damage. Taash and Bellara are some insane damage machines that somehow can completely solo rooms for you while you just sit down and watch. Duration ability damage is good. This is gonna give you your ultimate very often. Your ultimate is not great, it can miss very easily, but it's still a decent amount of damage. It's invisibility frames, it's good. You want to have weapon damage, ring, and defense ring. These are the two strongest rings, I think. Shocked and burning rings, also bleeding ring, honestly. They both work. I heavily advise not using a Justice Will. It's just not worth it. You're always gonna have a lot of burning around. This is just not great. Runes are not really that important. The only important one, I think, it's Besiege, because it helps you deal with mages a lot easier. But even then, your damage is gonna be so high in late game that this is just not important. It's really strong for leveling though. Last but not least, I want to talk about companions. And this time around, I think there's two companions that are just so much better than the others. The first one is Bellara, and I talked about her a lot, and now I'm finally going to explain you why. Galvanized Tear is a really strong grouping ability. It can deal shocked in a location after it expires, but this is here mostly for grouping. It's just good. Your main shocked applier is going to be Fate Bolts. Fate Bolts, thanks to these two upgrades, which are Direct Current and Refraction, are going to apply shocked on many enemies and pretty big AoE. It's just really, really good. And of course, thanks to Focusing Contraption, shock damage is gonna kill a lot of stuff. So it's really easy to have high uptime of air shocked and use her abilities in situations where you need them. And thanks to having the jumper's binding and the belt that applies shocked in an AoE, you can also use other stuff to just help you out in different ways. The other companion I want to talk about is Taash. Taash is just great. Their ability to do a lot of damage, and they can very easily give a lot of reduced defense and a lot of reduced fire resistance and also vulnerability to fire damage. Fire damage is really, really important to this build. Gaining maximum burning stacks is obviously great. Reduced defense per burning stack is nuts. This is just one of the strongest things in this build. You always want to have Taash with you, and they can also reduce fire resistance with burning. There's a lot of stacks of burning, so this basically makes fire damage honestly effective even against rage demons. This is just absolutely amazing. Taash is a great party member, and Overwhelmed reduces fire resistance even more. There's just no way to go wrong. I don't really think other party members are as strong as Bellara and Taash, but they can work. Nev can decently work, but honestly, I would advise just going everywhere with Bellara and Taash. They're so fun to use, and they're just really, really strong. I want to leave you to the showcase next, where I'm gonna show you some Hall of Valor combat. Even though I personally think this build shines the brightest against bosses, it just melts every boss fight, dragons included. But to avoid any spoilers, I'm just gonna leave you with some Hall content. Another small note I want to add before that is that this build allows for a lot of skill expression. It's very action oriented, it's very spammy, and it's very rich with split-second decisions. You could potentially get even more than what I am, with proper pairing, proper positioning, proper ability usage, but for what it's worth, just enjoy the mayhem.
Alright, who's ready for some action? I know I am.
Nicely done, Rook.
Say all bars are weak. Won't someone make them eat those words?
Them down clean.
Hang on to your hats. We've got some new challenges for you today.
This has been all I have to offer about the champion. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what you want me to tackle next, and if you'd like to see some other games as well here. See you next time. Enjoy.